My friends, pay close attention to what I'm about to reveal now, because what you're seeing in the international headlines isn't diplomacy. It's a cry for help disguised as arrogance. While the world watches what I call the Great Bluff, what's happening behind the scenes in Brasilia reveals a scenario of absolute panic that the mainstream media tries to cover up at all costs. The system realized that things have been pushed too far and that the time for comfortable lies is over. If Lula keeps picking this childish fight with Donald Trump to try to save his own skin in the elections, the price won't be paid by the political elite, but by your wallet, your dinner table, and your freedom. And the real reason for this desperation is something no one has had the courage to tell you until now, but the game is up and the isolation is irreversible. Lula traveled to Europe on a desperate mission to find friends. Yes, he went after France, Germany. He tried to gather support. He tried to gather the old guard of the aristocratic left to create a shield against the Trump hurricane that's approaching, but what he found was a frosty diplomatic reception. He was received by Pedro Sanchez from Spain, a leader who is so weakened, so surrounded by corruption scandals involving his own wife, that the photo of the two together was described in Madrid as a meeting of leaders in free fall. Pay attention to what that impact really means. When Lula shouts about sovereignty in Europe, what he's actually doing is confessing that he's lost control. He knows that Trump is not Biden. He knows that the time for empty promises and formal embraces is over. His argument is that no country can interfere with another. But where was that sovereignty when Putin invaded Ukraine? Well, Lula remains silent. He preaches peace but funds those who oppress. Lula's courage ends exactly where American sanctions begin. And I ask you, if he's so confident, why did he send a confidential letter to Washington asking them to please reconsider the investigations into slave labor in Brazil? The tough guy on stage is the same one who begs for mercy behind the scenes after firing the prosecutor who tried to put the Chinese giant BID on the blacklist of companies that use slave labor. And that's not sovereignty. It's strategic submission in disguise. Ideology to fool the gullible voter. Now look at the photo of the São Paulo Forum. Last year there were 5 smiling leaders. Today only 4 are left. Boric from Chile has already realized that the smell of political defeat is contagious and jumped ship. And he doesn't want to be associated with the economic failure that Lula represents. Even the new president of Mexico, the protege of the system, avoided appearing next to Lula at recent meetings. The stock of dictators is running out, and Lula is the next one who will be left talking to himself at the table. The system is collapsing because it realized that the 2003 model doesn't work anymore. Lula destroyed the reputation of Brazil's foreign ministry. Brazil, which was once the leader of world diplomacy with Baron of Rio Branco and Oswaldo Aranha, is now seen as the useful idiot of failed regimes. Do you remember when he tried to mediate the nuclear deal in Iran and was ridiculed by the whole world? Well, he's repeating the same mistake now in Ukraine and Gaza. He wants to mediate conflicts while openly taking the side of the aggressors and terrorists. Ukraine has already said it has lost trust in him. Israel has already declared him persona non grata. And Lula is not a mediator. He is a blind supporter who is isolating Brazil from the developed world. He tries to sell the idea that the world cannot wake up and go to sleep with a president declaring wars, but he ignores the invasions by his own allies. It's a diplomatic schizophrenia that is costing the country dearly. He is trying to revive the UN Security Council to stop the madness of war. But do you know how many countries accepted his proposal? None. No one takes seriously a leader who defends Maduro while preaching democracy. If you think the problem is just ideological, wait until you see what Trump has prepared for Cuba. There is a figure emerging from the shadows that Lula fears more than any sanction. And he is known by the name El Cangrejo, the grandson of Raul Castro. While Lula defends the dictator Diaz-Canel, Trump is already negotiating with the new generation of the Cuban regime over Brasilia's head. And Trump gave an ultimatum. Diaz-Canel has to go. He can go into exile, he can disappear, but he can't stay. And El Cangrejo has already realized that communism has failed and that the island is about to explode in an unprecedented new civil uprising. He is willing to sacrifice the old leaders to save his own skin and open up the economy to the United States. Lula is being run over by reality. He defends Cuba's sovereignty, but the regime's own heir is negotiating the surrender. The system is shaking because Lula has lost his role as a mediator. He's no longer Obama's guy, now he's Trump's problem. And he handed over 100% of our rare earths to try to appease Washington and protect Alexandre de Moraes. But Trump doesn't just want minerals. He wants order restored in Latin America. Lula's desperation with Cuba is the fear of seeing his greatest ideological symbol dismantled by a deal he can't stop. The new dawn that Trump promised for Cuba is the ultimate nightmare for the São Paulo Forum. Lula is stuck in a memory of the Cuban Revolution, but he knows that if Cuba falls, his house of cards here in Brazil loses its moral foundation.
Então, o pânico de Lula não é apenas externo. Ele sabe que a economia real é o juiz.
A cart of groceries costs twice as much as it did in 2022, and fuel prices have risen dramatically. Tell us in the comments, how much are gasoline and diesel costing in your city? Lula knows that if truck drivers and app delivery workers stop the country, his government will collapse in 24 hours. And for that, he's trying to distract you with this fight with Trump about visas and tariffs. But the truth is that he's desperate about the approval ratings that keep dropping. With the talk about censorship on social media, because he doesn't have any more arguments to convince the people. He criticizes Trump for imposing rules, but he himself tries to impose his will on the central bank and on Brazilian institutions. He complains about political interference in Venezuela, but ignores that Maduro lost the election and refused to leave. Lula is a defender of beloved dictators. But he knows that Trump doesn't mess around. Trump has already destroyed his buddies in Iran and Venezuela. And the next target is the heart of the leftist project in Latin America. Lula is trying to create an external enemy to justify internal failure. But the Brazilian people have already realized that Lula's problem is Lula himself. So my friends, we are witnessing the end of an era. The São Paulo Forum is being dismantled by economic reality and by the strength of a new global leadership that does not accept blackmail. Trump doesn't need to fire a single shot. He just needs to let the Latin American left reap the misery it has sown for decades. The isolation of Brasilia is irreversible. The plan for Cuba has already begun and the crab is already on the negotiating table. Pay attention, what I told you here is just the surface. And if you want to understand what the media is hiding about this transition in Cuba and how it will impact your wallet and your freedom, you need to take the next step. There is a place where censorship doesn't reach and where we keep discussing these topics with the depth they require. The QR code is on your screen, the link is in the first pinned comment or in the video description. There are more than 3,000 subscribers who keep our content active and independent. And if you're tired of whining and the woke culture that has taken over entertainment, I invite you to check out our movies and series channel. There we give you the best tips so you can enjoy
Sua família sem doutrinação, apenas boas histórias. Então,
the link is now showing on the card, in the description, and in the pinned comment. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave a like on the video to strengthen this community that stands for freedom. Now shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you in the next video.